You.
And we're live. I think we're live. Last week we had a glitch. Hopefully this time there's no glitch, from my understanding from our flight director. But wanted to introduce you all to our podcast. Welcome to the show. I'm John, founder of Wio Support, and with us today we've got Artie, our flight engineer.
Hello.
We've got Jackson,
Hey, everybody.
and we've got Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Best part is we were able to do a mic check officially before the show starts, and good news is Mike checked in, so we're good.
I'm here. I am here.
So it's going to be an interesting one. We've had some cybersecurity things happen. We've had a couple. Well, how do you say it? The world's had some big impact from some technology problems. But I think most everybody's recovered by now. So, want to go over our basic hygiene. I want to talk about Crowdstrike and what that means, and what they've tried to do to help us out and understand where that came from. And then you see if we can talk about Yubikeys and the FIDO-based hardware keys that are available out there. So with those ideas in mind, how about we get started? Mike, you wanted to talk just a little bit about your basic hygiene on cybersecurity and how to stay safe and how to navigate this world that is pretty much out to get us.
Yeah, it's interesting that the habits that I had 20 years ago are not the habits that are going to cut it today. 20 years ago and longer ago, in fact, when it was just I came from an era where when I was in high school, we had computers, but we didn't have the internet yet. And so this idea of a network of computers was limited to just a particular room or a building, and that was it. And so, password was very simple. Choosing passwords, for example. Why do I have to make my passwords so complex? And it's not because you're trying to keep other people. I mean, part of it's because you're trying to keep other people from guessing it, but people are now using tools on the computer to help them guess the password. And one example of that would be a brute force. So I'm now in the process of making sure that I have a password manager. So I personally use Bitwarden, works really great to manage all my passwords because I want to make sure that I use a different password for every service and application that I use. If for whatever reason that one service or application has a data breach and somebody is able to obtain somehow the password that I use on that service, I wouldn't want that to be a same password that could be used on another service. So my bank has a password, my stock market has a different password, my my logins for my email is a different password. It's all different passwords. It's really interesting. My wife looks at me and goes, "You and all your silly different passwords, like why do you have to make them so hard and so complex?" I'm like, "It's only a matter of time before, someone's gonna guess password 1, 2, 3, 4." That just doesn't cut it. And, you know, there's a big long history that we could go into compromised passwords. There's a list out there. You can look up your passwords. Have I been pwned or some of those other websites? Look up your password and see if it's been in a compromised data breach, and you'll be surprised, what's out there. So that's just one thing. Doing good passwords, making sure I have separate passwords is probably the most important thing, and then a secure password that's hard to guess. Um, Another thing, I'm always mindful of who's around me. So like when I'm at the ATM or somewhere else where you have to use your debit card, punch in the PIN. I don't want people looking over my shoulder, watching me punch in my PIN. So I'm always looking for that. Being aware of your surroundings, being aware of the websites that you go to. There's now a thing now where every website should be using some kind of secure communication layer to communicate back and forth with your computer. That wasn't always the case. It used to be that a lot of stuff was sent plain text over the internet, and that was a way that hackers could obtain information about you, and maybe your password was being sent in clear text, or maybe a PIN number or something else. And if somebody is on the network and able to sniff out those um, data packets that are going back and forth, they'll be able to read that information. So making sure
I,
that you have secure encrypted connections, that's another thing I look for now too. Most websites
I
should have it.
I remember back DEF CON 9. It's going back in time, guys. But uh, like Wi-Fi was still kind of new. People weren't really there. SSL really wasn't kicked on. And there was somebody that was just posting up a live feed of harvested passwords from the Wi-Fi that people were using to log into their accounts. So like cell phones, they would connect to the hotel Wi-Fi, and they would just scrape that. And they just had a projector in the main hall, and they were just showing everybody's secure communications that wasn't
Mhm.
secure, which is passed in clear
Secure.
text. And I mean, this was DEF CON, guys. This is not the slouches of the world. This was cream of the crop. So even back then, it wasn't a thing, and it's pretty good now. But there's still people that take for granted some of the basics. Sorry, Mike, I had to share that one.
Well, that's a good one. Going along with that, just I I know that as IT professionals, we're always paying attention to the news to listen and find out what's the latest in cybersecurity. There's new encryption algorithms coming out. There's some encryption algorithms that they end up finding out, hey, somebody's busted this. It's not as secure as we thought it was, or it's not secure anymore because there are ways around it. I remember the first time I was starting to get on Wi-Fi, everything was WEP at that time. And they thought, yeah, here's a WP key and web key, and punch this in and you're signed on into the Wi-Fi. And now it's like web, you'd get laughed at if you're using web still. Um,
Like using packing tape to lock your front door.
yeah, exactly. And as the standards have increased, we've been able to increase the encryption algorithms, but paying attention to that, making sure that you're using it, and it's going to be a balance. If it's really new, then it could be that your hardware doesn't necessarily support it yet. But at the same time, if your hardware is super old, it's probably not meeting the minimum standards for security either. So just being aware of those things and making sure that you upgrade to, if possible, the latest and greatest so that you can get the most out of your security. Um, there's lots of things. Jackson, you got any other ideas for cybersecurity hygiene and habits that you get into?
Yeah, one when you were talking about passwords, that one is big, especially when everything you log into nowadays has a password. So everyone ends up kind of using the same, two or one password across all these sites. And there should be a YouTube short going up on our channel soon enough where I actually go through one of the processes that I use in creating a unique password that is hard to guess and but easy to remember. And it works to kind of duplicate what you see nowadays. If you're use Google, you'll often see Google will have a an autofill password, and it's just all random letters and numbers with dashes. Um, and this process I can explain a little bit here without going too into depth with it. But you basically take a sentence that is unique to you, and you throw some numbers in there. So a really bad example of this would be my name is Jackson and I have 7 dogs and 3 cats. Then what you do is you take those numbers and you take the first letter of each word. Now keep in mind there are algorithms that are out there testing for sentences like these and making them into passwords. But if you mix in numbers in it and if you make it very unique to you, avoid common sentences, um, then you can actually end up with a password that looks pretty similar to what Google might give you as an example strong password, right? And the biggest things is you want to go for length, find something that's unique to you, and then what you do is you take, say, you take the first half of the alphabet and you capitalize all the letters that start with that, and then you add some special characters and symbols there. And if you look at it straight on, it's seemingly very random, and it's something that's going to be hard for most algorithms. Most hackers that are trying to find your password, they're not testing for these types of things, generally, right? And it's something that I use, and I find that I have now many passwords, and I don't have a problem remembering any of them because I'm not remembering random letters and numbers. I'm remembering sentences, things that are meaningful to me. And so that's a huge thing because I know we've talked about it before on this podcast as well. Is all it takes is one of these sites that you're logged into to get leaked or to have a data breach, and then once your password is out there, there are people that are out there. They'll buy any single password off the dark web, and then they'll just go and they'll just start trying that password and email combination on every single site that they can think of. I remember the worst experience that I had with that, and when I learned my lesson about doing this, is I had, I think, only two passwords that I used across everything: banking, Apple, Microsoft, everything.
Oh,
I had two passwords, and this was a hard lesson learned because I was out camping with one bar of service, and my phone was about 7%, I think. And I was sitting on the campfire, and all of a sudden my phone starts buzzing, and I was about to go, go to bed for the night. And I look, and on my phone are 20 emails from all the different services that I've ever used saying, someone's trying to log in your account, someone's trying to log in your account. And luckily for most of these, I had two-factor enabled, so they didn't get into very many of them. So that's another plug for using multi-factor authentication. Even though they knew my password, they couldn't get very far. Yeah, that was scary. So I went on a password changing rush with 7% battery on my phone with one bar of service, and it was not fun. But I mean, it's a thing that happens, and I've heard and seen it happen to lots of other people where they only use one or two passwords, and as soon as one of those gets leaked, and it's not a question of if, but when, yeah, their entire digital life has been overturned.
well, yeah. I mean, it's when you say it's not if, it's when. I mean, that's kind of been our mantra. That comes from we've got Fortune 500 companies that get hacked, breached, and leaked. AT&T is a great example of that. For years they denied that it even happened, and recently they just got into a lot of hot water because no, it actually did happen, and they had to release. We're sorry. Here's your information. Here's what was exposed. It's one of those that if we had that information sooner, we could respond better. You could imagine, Jackson, that if on your trip you got notice, but if they said 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, hey, by the way, you got breached, you'd look at it and say, wait a minute, I you could have told me in the moment, I could have done something about it, but you waited 3 weeks to tell me, or in AT&T's case, and
Yep.
some of the breaches they've had in the past, it's been 4 or 5 years.
And now somebody
Um,
spent, a couple $100 on Amazon and Newegg, and yeah.
Open up 7 credit cards, 3 bank accounts, and own 5 Maseratis. Yeah. Technically, it's in your name, so you should have those cars, right? No, but it's a frightening world out there. If you don't have good hygiene, you don't have good skills. Another one that we should talk about would be MFA bombing or two-factor bombing, where if you as a hacker hack into somebody's account, you say, "Hey, give me access. Hey, give me access. Hey, give me access." Hey, you just hammer the poor soul that's doing it. Eventually, they're going to say yes, or they'll type in the code to whatever system they've got, just to shut up the dings. Uh, it happens a lot more than we think, and definitely happens a lot more than people admit. If you see 2FA attacks where it's constantly harassing you, saying, yes, give me the code, give me the code, give me the code, stop what you're doing right then and there and change your password.
Hmm.
Don't put in the code. Don't go to a system that you know and trust, because somebody has, if you're getting those notices, somebody has your name and their password to that site and they're actively trying to hack in. That's your clue. That's your warning. Go fix it. Don't give them the keys. There's been some IT administrators that actually got hit with that, which led to some breaches.
Mm.
Um,
So,
going, along with that, and we talk a lot about the cybersecurity. We're talking about name and password authentication, protecting that specific data and keeping it out of, bad people's hands. But the other thing I was just thinking of is also a lot of us have a social media presence now too. And it made me think back to when I was actually in a cybersecurity class, and the professor had us do an essay report on some kind of a breach. And the one that my team and I picked was a Facebook breach. Now, fortunately, from what I seem to remember of this, is that this particular breach, as far as I know, I don't know if it was known if it was actually exploited in the wild. It was discovered by someone though who goes out and does bug bounties. So a bug bounty, just to explain that, is where a company has a pretty good idea that there could be flaws in their security or their software. And so they offer rewards for people to try to hack in or try to exploit some type of flaw. Find a flaw and then exploit it and prove that it is a flaw, it needs to be taken care of. And if people can do this successfully, find a flaw, exploit it, you know, capture all the evidence of how the flaw works and report it, they will offer cash reward, depending on the severity of the flaw. And then the developers can then go back and patch the flaw and make sure that it's not a flaw anymore. Well, this particular person found a flaw in Facebook that came through using certain third-party applications. And I don't know if anybody really realizes this anymore, but there are applications that operate on the Facebook platform. A lot of times it could be games or other things, but in this particular case, it was, "Which Disney princess are you?" You go on, you see that's like people take the little questionnaires and everything, and then it shares to their profile like, "Oh, you're Princess, Cinderella because of this, 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 and this," and everything. Well, every time you operate in an application on Facebook, that application is usually given access to your personal information on Facebook, okay? Which could be everything from your friends, your birthday, your hometown, whatever you've populated in your profile, but also your posts, the things that you have posted, the pictures that you have uploaded, and so on and so forth. And he figured out a way that he could circumvent past that by accessing the app in certain ways, using the API that the app was using in certain ways, and access somebody else's complete profile on Facebook and all the pictures and everything, even though he was not a friend of that person and didn't have otherwise access to it, he was able to access that. So then he was able to report that to Facebook and everything. So then it leads me to the next part of when you are on social media, I don't use those apps. Every time it says, "Oh, you should take this questionnaire, find out, which character from Star Trek are you?" I don't do that because I know that I'm giving that app access to my personal information. And even at that, there's people who will just copy and paste the post, just like play this game with me and, you know, when was your first date with your spouse? And just answer these little questions, play the what, how many states have you visited or anything like that. And some of those they ask like for certain details. It's like you're giving away your birthday, you're giving away this and that. Like And even if it seems kind of innocent, like there's the ones where take the month of your birthday and then combine it with the and look up on this table and that, that's your first name and this is the type of elf that you are and then the last digit in your birth year is this. Well, if anybody can see that, they can reverse engineer it and say, "Oh, well, this guy was born on June 23rd, 1984," or something like that, just by what you've posted publicly in social media. I don't do those. I stay away from them. My social media is for me to keep in touch with friends and family. That's all I use it for. I don't play games. I don't use apps. I don't do anything else. If I post something, I post it to where it's private and only to the people that I have authorized to share it with. And that's it. Period. End of discussion.
Well, that's a great way of keeping yourself isolated and safe while you're on a platform. I mean, how many places have you been where they say install our app to get access to these features and benefits, or you gain loyalty points or rewards for purchases or something. It's giving that app access to your phone gives more than just access to your purchase history. It gives access to, if you give it, and that's why the phones challenge you. It's you want access to the contacts, you want access to device location. Phones are getting smart. Well, I shouldn't say getting smart. Getting less complicated as far as um, giving out your sensitive information. It will say only while using this app instead of give my location all the time. So they're helping people move past the default, yeah, sure, whatever, just shut up asking me questions, just pass on. When the phones challenge you like that, it's a good thing to stop and say, do I really want to give access to this app, to this section of my life? Because everybody that has a cell phone has their life on that cell phone. It's your gateway to the internet. It's your gateway to your accounts. It's a gateway to your security. If you can hack somebody's phone, you basically have 80% of their life in your control. So everything starts from there. Don't put more on your phone than you need to have on your phone. That's why you should always install from trusted resources. That's why Apple has been pushing so hard to keep the App Store as the sole place you can install apps from. Not saying everything on Apple Store is great, but sideloading apps, you better trust that developer and trust that developer's supply chain that they don't have anything compromised. So, speaking of supply chains, we actually just saw one. A hacker didn't cause a problem, but I want to switch over to CrowdStrike for a second if we can. CrowdStrike was a pretty catastrophic event for them. Let me pull up the articles here. I said, let me pull up some articles. Um, so, who was affected by CrowdStrike? Mike, Jackson, Artie, any of you?
I was not personally affected by CrowdStrike. I did mention earlier, just in company channels, that my sister was indirectly affected by CrowdStrike. None of her work systems directly were affected, but services that they used and relied on were affected such that their company could not then use the services. And in particular, they were using, I don't know what brand, I don't know who it was, but a VPN service for their work at home people to be able to log into basically the company network at the main office and do work. And a lot of their tools and resources have to be on that company network in order to function correctly. And if they don't have the VPN working and you're sitting at home, then about all you can do is check some emails and respond to emails and maybe jump on Zoom or something for a meeting, but that's about it. I mean, you're not getting any productive work done at that point.
know
Yeah,
that
there's. Go ahead, Artie.
I know that a bunch of airlines were shut down, and I was seeing some stuff on social media the night before everything just hit the fan, where I think it was Delta saying, "Yeah, we're going to be grounding our flights." Um, Coming out of the FAA saying, "Yeah, there's some issues with this," but saw a wonderful animation of all the planes for the 24-hour period after, and just all the planes over the U.S. they just stopped going out, stopped moving,
Hmm.
and there was just a few planes coming in from overseas, but
It
it
was
it interfered with
almost
a
Yep.
like
lot.
watching 9/11 again, almost.
You lost total control of who's in air, where, when, why, how. Are they landing? Are they in conflict with each other? Are they stacking up right?
Yeah, does
You know,
anybody know the exact what exactly was it that the airlines relied on that caused the flaw?
My understanding is mostly that there is their ticketing systems for being able to ticket and properly ticket passengers, so that they had the proper boarding passes, printed out and available so
Hmm.
that they could go, get on the airplane. But if you don't have your ticket and you can't get on the airplane, well, now the plane's sitting there empty, can't fly because we don't have our paying passengers. I mean, I can only imagine. And I've heard that it wasn't just airlines; it was also certain train railway services, like in Europe and in other places. Um,
well,
some
it's
banks, yeah.
any system that had any Windows-based system that had CrowdStrike agent installed.
Hmm.
So
If
it
that's
was a
if it's in your supply chain, in your workflow, in your company's workflow, if it's involved in any of the technology stack that runs through to get work done, you can't get work done. If it's a mission critical job of, you know, publishing passenger manifest or cargo manifest or any of that, you all of a sudden can't do that one piece of the job. So the entire supply, the entire operation fails because you can't do that one thing, the mission critical component.
Mhm.
But
So
go
what
ahead.
uh was it a bad update that was causing Windows to crash, or is it that it
Yeah.
was cutting off their connection?
So it was, and there's some good deep dives on this. If I recommend Dave's Garage.
Hmm.
He did not affiliated. I wish I knew the guy. It'd be awesome if I knew that guy. But I just happened to watch his podcast, and he helped design Windows from the ground up, all the way back to Windows 3.1 or MS DOS days. Um, his takeaway on it is a good engineer takeaway. But for the simple takeaway, the what is it? TLDR. Too long didn't read.
Hmm.
This update loads in and has a problem with the way it manages memory and causes the system to go into a loop state.
Ah,
Memory looks, can't find, try again equals reboot, hits that loop, and you're just stuck in there until you break out. The problem with this one is you have to manually go to each computer that's affected and run the fix. There's no from the cloud, push a button, push the update.
mm,
Because the system's
This
not even
update broke
booting.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I want to just think about this for a second. So CrowdStrike was an application that goes on Windows. People were saying this one company has too much impact on the way the supply chain works. It affected all the Windows systems it was installed on. And I'm scratching my head thinking, isn't Windows bigger than CrowdStrike?
Hmm.
I mean, Windows updates have to be spot on every time, and they're not. And they break hundreds of thousands, if not millions of computers when they go wrong. But these updates aren't as rare as we'd like them to be. There's always going to be an update that breaks. So one of the things we could spend some time talking about the actual impact of what happened. I mean, there was a story I read earlier. They're estimating the Fortune 500 lost $8 billion or something like that. I'm quoting that badly. Um, you know, the losses are just insane, right? And it got so bad that Warren Buffett decided to get in. So I'm reading from CNBC. Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway top insurance executives warned this year about a massive loss from cyber insurance policies. This kind of qualifies, but it's not a threat actor. It's actually a supply chain problem. So people are starting to get a little more gun shy on this. For us, it's not if, it's when, right? I don't want that to turn into our motto, because that would be a horrible battle cry. It's not if, it's when. But it really is. What do you do when this happens? That's the battle cry. We want to solve problems by having a plan of action in case something goes wrong. Not if, it's in case something goes wrong. So computer doesn't boot, what do you do? Computer's infected with virus, what do you do? Computer's ransomware, what do you do? Fire, flood, act of God, whatever there is, something's going to go wrong in your technology stack, and you got to have a plan. And it's frightening that there's so many people, so many companies out there that were affected by this. They didn't have a plan other than, gosh, let's fix plan A and make plan A work again.
You
Right,
know,
and
this
when you go ahead, Mike.
this reminds me years and years and years ago, and I'm talking early 1980s. Okay, I was just a kid, right? I remember going with my parents to the grocery store. Okay, and we were in the grocery store doing our shopping, and the power went out. There was a thunderstorm that had come in. Something had happened and it knocked the power out. I think a lightning struck a telephone pole or something. It knocked power out to at least half the city that we were in. So power wasn't coming back anytime soon. And the place literally went dark. I mean, there was no, I mean, there might have been a little bit of emergency lighting, but there was at least skylights and, windows. The light was coming in the windows and skylights and everything. So it wasn't completely pitch black, but it got dark. And so we had our shopping cart, and we were pretty much done with shopping anyway, and we headed up to the checkout line. Well, the power's out, and all these checkers had set aside, like they had pushed aside their digital cash registers, and they had pulled out like these older like mechanical cash registers. Like every one of them, like it seemed like they had them stashed underneath the counter, like just in case something like this happened. They pulled these out and they were doing these mechanical cash registers or something and ringing people up and handling cash. And if people were using credit cards, they had the old, carbon copy, run the credit card, make the carbon copy imprint of the credit card, and those transactions would just end up being processed at a later date and everything. But they had a backup plan. That was the thing. The power's out and they had a backup plan, and business went on for the most part as normal as it could, given the circumstances. I didn't
And
see that
that
anybody. I don't see an airline whipping out a mechanical cash register or a ticket printer or anything like that to say, "Yeah, we can still take care of you. Look, here, we'll print tickets like this."
Didn't
I didn't see that happening. I mean, everything came to a stop.
what is it, Southwest Airline have a comment on that? Because they were still
they
using
did.
I
like a
I don't
3.1
know
system.
if yeah, I don't
Say it
know
again,
if
Artie.
the the one I've seen in the memes, I don't know 100% if it was actually Southwest that made it or somebody made it look like Southwest said it. But I do know that, Southwest was in the news recently for having a very old and outdated system that, in hindsight, looking at this, that system probably would not have been affected by CrowdStrike. So I don't
Well,
know.
and this goes more to one of the things that I love about the technology community. There's no one standard.
Mhm.
There's multiple vendors, there's multiple providers, there's multiple service companies that can attach their software to these systems. You could imagine if there was just one size fits all, everybody gets the same copy of Windows. Everybody goes up and down at the same time. If you've got your half the computers are on Linux, or a third of them are on Linux, a third are on Mac. An issue will hit at some point, but then you're only hitting a third of the world instead of the
Mhm.
entire. Having a bunch of different systems. Okay, Southwest is up and running. Great. Just everybody jump on Southwest because they can actually keep going. Of this round, what's the next round look like? I remember a time when Southwest data center was hit by lightning, and they were down for 3 days.
Yeah, it's like with Mike's example, that's almost you'd think it's almost to the extreme, right? We're 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 kind of past the days where everyone is holding on to mechanical machinery now because we've used technology for so long. It is reliable to a certain point, right? But our backup methods have also progressed, right? So you would expect, okay, maybe you don't have a mechanical system in the backup, but you have another digital system that you know is for sure good, and you are able to switch that over, and that goes back to the entire, uh, you know, exercise of planning for an outage, right? When we plan for backups, or when you're planning to, make your backups, how am I going to in a simpler situation, let's talk about, just a computer, a single system. When I'm backing up my data, um, or when I plan for how I'm going to do that, I don't plan for what I want the backup to look like. I plan for what recovery is going to look like. Because if I'm running in a time sensitive situation, I don't want my recovery plan to take very long. And if we're talking very time sensitive, like within, an hour, say, or less, then you want to be able to just flip a switch and just move on to a different system while you can then in the background fix what's broke, right? And so it's the whole debate of, you know, where am I going to put my data, or where am I going to put my systems that are functioning, and make sure that that is a protected system. So when you run the CrowdStrike update, that's not affected. So if something goes wrong, we just switch systems. And so you have to plan for what downtime looks like and what a recovery situation looks like, and then
Hmm.
recursively you say, okay, how are we going to keep that up to date? How are we backing that up? And so it's like you would hope that companies like this, like airlines, and maybe they do, and maybe I'm speaking from a place of ignorance, and it simply just took them longer. We would hope they would plan for that and plan, how can we not be down for more than a few hours if something like this happens?
Well, that's where it's. I don't want to get too grotesque on it, but it's like Russian roulette. You're not sure which system's going to go down when. I mean, it's a
Mm-hmm.
guessing game. It's we could try this, we could try this. A comprehensive backup plan, a comprehensive recovery plan should look at every section of your stack and say, okay, here's a website taking tickets. Here's our website interface to broker agents taking reservations. Here's the system for the ticket agents. Here's a system for handing off to the airports so they can track manifests. Just all those all those layers need points of redundancy. And then the worst place could be, did the replica engine die? Is it not able to replicate that information between your primary and your backup system? Because if the replicator goes down, then you don't have either system that you can rely on. So that it's each system needs its own recovery plan, its own disaster plan. But then it's also insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody put it to me this way on life insurance, and this is probably the worst perspective, but it's probably the easiest way to say it. Life insurance is like betting that you're going to die, and the insurance company saying, "I bet you won't." And so you spend $100 a month betting that you're going to die that month, and next month you're going to do it again. Next month you're going to do it again.
I've always
Eventually you'll die, but
yeah.
by that time the policy's gone and
I've always
doesn't work.
thought that insurance was just another form of legalized gambling, really. So,
And it is. I mean, it's got its place. I don't want to disrespect anybody in insurance because when the car accident happens, you need that insurance.
It's good to have. Yeah.
When a medical incident happens, you need that coverage because a trip to the hospital, oh my gosh, I know people personally that have had to file bankruptcy because of an unexpected hospital trip, and they didn't have coverage. So it's one of those necessary evils. If you don't spend time preparing for the eventual, you will get hacked. You will have a system failure. Something will break, and it's not through any action or inaction of your own. CrowdStrike took down Fortune 500 companies that have comprehensive IT departments inside them that make sure that things are working all the time, and they went down. Now let's give a shout out to our brethren and sisters in the IT industry that got these systems back up and running in just a short amount of time. You physically had to go touch every system, and they did. So round of applause to all you guys out there that did that. That's a heroic job. Getting this world back up and running after hundreds of thousands. I forget. Artie, maybe you know the number off the top of your head. I could probably look it
Um,
up. How many systems went down with
over
CrowdStrike?
7.5 million.
And everyone had to get touched.
Oh man.
They still aren't fully recovered though. There are some that are
No,
still getting fixed.
but it's those companies that had a good disaster plan and recovery plan that got it fixed. They had a team on standby to go out and fix those things. Now, I will say this, and it's not often we talk about our clients. We did have a couple customers affected by it, and fortunately, we were able to get our customers back online as soon as the fix was available and as soon as the technology stack behind that fix was up and running. So none of our systems were affected, thankfully, but we've got recovery plans for each of our systems because people look to us to be the experts. We're
Mhm.
here to help, and if we can't help ourselves, we can't help other people.
And it's certainly no inexpensive endeavor as well when you're planning for these things, right? Um, you know, I think about a single system, but then you have to think about what about huge data centers, right?
Hmm.
Especially when you think about redundancy, and that gets more
And redundancy.
important. Yeah, that gets more important as you.
Right.
I was a little late to catch to that one. But as you build for that, right? I mean, you essentially have double the necessary resources for one uh to get the job done that are just kind of running and sitting and not really doing anything. But it's a necessary evil because if not, then you lose a lot of money in downtime. Um,
Yeah, let's say you buy a 20 terabyte hard drive and you fill that with all your home movies, your pictures, your 20 terabytes is a lot of data, right? I don't know how to fill 20 terabytes with just my life experiences. It probably can fit on a thumb drive the size they are now, 256 gig thumb drives.
uh-huh.
But with all the documents you got, with all the pictures, all your media, all your resources, you load on 20 terabytes. If that drive dies, what do you do?
Devastating. Devastating. You have no hope, right?
It's gone. 20
Gone.
terabytes. So let's walk that path. So you got two hard drives, so now you have to buy two 20 terabyte hard drives,
Probably
but they're
another
both physically in the same space.
maybe
So
150
you've got
bucks each,
that
yeah.
redundancy. So you put a hard drive somewhere else, or you carry it with you to a safe deposit box. Let's go for
Hmm.
the nines here, right? Carry it to a safe deposit box, and then you got three hard drives that have your data. It's three copies of data. That's where I feel comfortable is having three copies with one of them completely untouchable.
But you
But
have to
it's
keep
not a
them all
20 terabyte
synchronized
hard drive.
too.
That's that's part of the problem, but it's also triple the cost.
Hmm.
You can't look at
And
a hundred
three
dollar
times the
hard drive and
hassle.
say it's $100. You got to think of it. This $100 hard drive will cost me 300 plus some time and aggravation in keeping it synchronized.
Yeah, it's you have to bite the bullet. There's really no other way to say it.
Jackson, you
Google
mentioned
Drive and OneDrive are looking pretty attractive now, don't
yeah,
they?
Jackson, you mentioned the cost and downtime plus the cost for all these IT professionals to do the fix or do the recoveries or whatever has to be done. I've already seen comments on various places in social media that yeah, CrowdStrike earned me 48 hours of overtime, or you know, all the overtime that's being spent just to fix things for people and get it back up and running.
I had a
Yeah,
friend
I would
So,
go ahead, Artie.
that also works in IT, and his company was saying, "Yeah, you've all got to come in and fix this problem, and no overtime for this." It was like, what? Yeah,
Ooh, when salary bites you in the butt.
mhm.
But yeah, it's like I would much rather pay my IT team to fix an issue that's not necessarily as urgent as being down. Well, I can still make money, right? So if I'm have a redundant system, like Mike was explaining, if you have those mechanical cash registers, you can still make money, and in the background, then you'll have to spend some money on your IT team to fix it, but you're probably not going to have to spend a lot of overtime on it because it's something that you're still operating.
Mhm.
Well, that goes into the calculator, guys. Don't let this get lost. When a company that sells $50 billion worth of product, when they're putting the disaster plan together, they're thinking, how long can a system be down before it's actually a problem? Previous role that I used to have, consulted with a company that had an email server that went down. They did Microsoft Exchange hosted on site, and the primary philosophy was if it goes down, it goes down. But they had in their mind that if it goes down for 2 days or more, now it's a problem because there was some world-based recoveries. Uh, Email when you're doing exchange to exchange or other email servers, when your server goes down, the sending server hangs on to email for X number of days. Some of them are up to 7. So when your server goes down, nothing's lost. When it comes back up, email comes in and you can respond to it. But if it goes more than 2 days, now we have a problem because people are going to get rejections saying servers unreachable. Now they're starting to lose money. So that company just had this idea of we can lose our server for 2 days. Who cares? People can make a phone call or send a text or do any of those other communication methods with our customers that we wanted. They wanted to have an avenue of communication that was real, but they didn't want to spend money. So their disaster plan was one of active recovery instead of planned recovery. I guess and now I'm thinking about it. Whether you're doing an active recovery or a planned recovery, it's going to cost you about the same. The difference is, like the adage of plan your work and work your plan.
Mhm.
You don't have to come up with a plan to then work in crisis. You can have a plan before crisis, and then you don't have to think about it. You just follow the recipe that you put together.
Right.
What's going to cost more gray hairs?
Yeah. Last thing, and before I beat this horse to death, um, just to put some numbers behind it, a study by Gartner said that the average cost of downtime for a company is $5,600 per minute.
Mhm.
So it is a serious spending time when we're talking about downtime. But again, that varies per size of company and what kind of things you're involved with. But
I got
that
that
was on
average share,
average.
guys. Just full disclosure, we're not making $5,000 a minute,
No.
but I've got a goal. I got a new goal. We're gonna go be average.
According to Gartner, I want to be average.
what's the mean?
Oh, I just closed it. Let me take a look. I don't know if it said the mean.
The mean is the boss driving you to that average.
Wrong mean.
Oh, it's funny.
So they said for small businesses, that number drops to the lower but still significant tune of $137 to $427 a minute.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
$500 a minute, and you're looking at what? That's a lot of money. After an
Imagine you're
hour?
down,
Good
you're down a
grief.
day. And then on top of, I don't know if that's considering if you're paying employees as well, if that's on top of that, or if that's just revenue lost. But um,
Yeah,
just
those numbers
something to,
are not attached to reality in a way that I think we could understand. Like a small business, we're talking like a 20-person company, a 5-person company.
Yeah.
Are we
It
talking New York small or Cheyenne small? You know,
it depends on the nature of the business too. I mean, yeah, if you rely a lot on those computer systems that maybe they're running a website, maybe they're running inventory and purchases and point of sale and all that stuff on a regular basis, then yeah, I could see that that's a problem. But there's a lot of businesses out there that yeah, they use a computer, but it's not it's not critical and core to what they do, and they still make lots of money, doing what they do, because maybe it's more physical type work or something that doesn't rely on technology as much. I don't know.
yeah, I think the so let's bring this to kind of a thought. You have to plan for disaster, plan for these outages. You have to have that plan actively maintained. But to mitigate that cost, you need to have a strong security presence, a strong security posture. I think with both in place, you could actually end up saving money instead of losing money because the law of averages says you're going to lose $5,000 a minute, or what was it, $240 a minute for the small business?
yeah,
The law
within that
of average,
range.
you're going to lose money. Do you want to lose money planned or unplanned? Now, the worst part of that is just like insurance, you don't know what is going to happen. You don't know if it's a fire. You don't know if it's a flood. You don't know if it's you know, breaking and entering or something like that, robbery. You don't know what the angle of attack is going to be. You just know you're going to lose something. So, yeah, cover your bases and then just know that you might just have to replace things. Not the best place, but if you put the right plan in place, you can recover quickly. One of the things that I like to do, and we were going to talk to Yubikeys, and I don't want to call out Yubikey specifically, but they are the top rated one. Having hardware password challenge, going back to your data hygiene there, um, it eliminates the ability to guess a password because it's going through a hardware key. Do either of you have your Yubikey handy by chance? I think Mike might. Should have gave him a heads up on this before, guys. I apologize. It's just gonna disappear. Love that background.
But yeah, I mean, explain real quickly, John. How does a YubiKey authorize you as who you are?
So let's there we go.
It's gonna be kind of funky because it wants to treat it as background, but
So inside that little USB thumb drive looking thing is a computer. So all passwords are hashed when they're processed by the computer. That little device has a computer in it that does the hashing. So it doesn't hold your password, but it does. So you say, is this my access to Google? Is this my access to Microsoft? Is this my access to my password manager? And the thumb drive will say, yeah, I think so, but then ask a challenging question of you and then give the answer to the application. So, and it's giving that hash saying, yes, Mike just authorized to his password manager. So instead of memorizing a 256 character password, The key does that for you, but it doesn't memorize the password. It memorizes your response to the password. So it adds that extra security, and it's something that can't be mimicked. It can't be harvested. Can't be attacked out of the thumb drive. It is in the thumb drive only. So it has to be right every time.
About
So
as close as you'll get to a physical key, no?
for right now, yeah.
For digital
Now,
devices, yeah.
now as speed of computers increases and computations, I mean, your average cell phone is faster than a Cray computer now. The original Cray supercomputer that could do what was it, a gigaflop? You got a gigaflop built into your Android now or your iPhone. Those passwords are then, how do I say this? For today and for the foreseeable future, these security keys will survive most attacks. You would have to have a state level, like NSA or KGB level kind of attack running against the Yubikey. You'd have to have physical access to the Yubikey to crack through that. Is it possible? Yes, but I'm not that prime a target. None of us are that prime a target. It would have to be, a threat of national security or a threat of, uh, you know, biblical proportions.
In other words, we are not financially, we are not good targets.
Well, and anybody that would want to target us won't have the financial backings to do that yet, because you would have to have 20 acres of supercomputer ready to hack at one little Yubikey.
Hmm.
20 years from now, it might be in a cell phone. We don't know.
That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. And it's you say that, and I believe you. It's certainly possible.
Things are just getting faster and better. It was interesting. A couple of years ago, we had the idea of computers are getting fast enough. We could do anything. What are we going to do with the extra computing power? And we are now scrambling and falling over ourselves to get more computing power loaded into data centers just to service AI. I was working with one of our clients. They want a new computer, and the sentence that just comes up says, only doing word processing, only doing Excel files, only doing just light web browsing. We don't need a heavy computer. And I'm thinking to myself, that used to be, like a Chromebook kind of thing. But if you're doing a computer, it's going to have AI. Microsoft's trying to roll out Copilot. They rolled that back. It's not going away, guys. They invested billions of dollars into this. It will be forced on us in some way, shape, or form. You got every other tech provider that's been investing in AI. It's an investment. They want return on that investment, and our computers are going to be where that investment pays off. So it better be a good computer that you put in front of yourself, or you're going to have a slow experience over the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm suggesting to our clients that you don't cheap out on that. Don't get the $300 computer. Get the computer that's going to handle the Copilot that's going to get installed in your computer a year from now. Otherwise, you're going to have a slow experience on that. And when you emotionally get to the point of wanting to use Copilot, when it's secure enough that you can trust it, if that's even possible, and when it's secure enough that you can trust it, you're going to use it. And if it's not responsive enough, you're going to hate your computer and you're going to want to buy a computer. So it's that, do you want future proof? Do you want just the basics now? But AI is coming. It's going to hit the computers and it's going to chew up even more resources. It's going to get faster and better. And the better it is, I mean, on this pelt, we should have holodecks in about 50 years. So I'm excited to see that.
Or the computer equivalent of an Edsel.
I can't say I know what that is. A Nedsel?
So
Edsel was a car. Oh, was it Ford?
It was Edsel.
No, it was there was a company that I think it was the Ford Motor Company that decided to do market research. They went out to the industry and said, "Hey, what do you want in a car?"
You're right. It
And
was
rather than
Ford.
filtering the results, they poured it into a car, and it was an absolute lemon.
Okay, wait, I'm looking at it. It looks kind of cool.
It does. It's got its it's got its niche, but they
That
fulfilled
car,
everybody's desires rather than cultivating ones that made sense together to give you the car.
the car also, from my understanding, got very poor gas mileage because, you know, it looks cool, but it was something like 3 to 4 tons,
Hmm.
and that was like twice as heavy as most of the other cars in the same range. So there were a lot of problems with it, and there were features that not everybody would want that were standard in it. So it
Yeah,
was
the Edsel,
too many
it's a
cooks.
good. Yeah, that's it. Is there was all the cooks in the kitchen, and they were all making decisions, and they rolled this thing out, and people that wanted option A could not tolerate option B for
I
whatever reason.
I want one. That's all I have to say about it. I want one now. Just for the sake of having it.
They are definitely a niche kind of vehicle. I've got a friend that has 4 of them.
Oh my goodness.
In his perspective on it was the first time any car company had taken the time to put an actual marketing approach to developing a car.
Hmm.
And he loved that. He loved the integration on that. He loved the whole nostalgia behind it. And I respect that. It's a cool car. But when it was first introduced, nobody wanted it. It didn't appeal to anybody because it had the wrong features built into it. So I mean, I don't know how we got onto this reference, but oh my goodness, what a great reference. The Edsel was a good vehicle that was launched badly.
Well,
Because it
it's
launched badly, got a bad name. Gosh, I think I just noticed the time. I think we're gonna have to end our
Edsel and
end our meeting
Edsel.
on the Edsel.
End on the Edsel.
That's hard to that doesn't roll off
Okay.
the tongue. That comes out and twists up my tongue in such a bad way. So hey, I'll flub
Yeah,
that
it
up.
does.
But I think great discussion, guys. This is I think those that watch this can probably appreciate the nature of technology and what we have to do to help people through technology problems. If anybody watching this wants to know more, reach out to us. We've got a cybersecurity conference coming up. We're going to be teaching people some of the basics and then some advanced tools on how to protect yourselves and how to approach the problem that technology can present once in a while. Using technology is great, but using it with a plan is even better. Until next week, everybody, I'm going to sign off. I am John,
I'm Mike.
I'm Jackson.
Marty.
and we'll see you then.
See you later.